So this video is to give more context to the short that I put up. In my late 20s, I chose to seek therapy. At that time, wonderfully, OHIP covered it. I live in Canada, Ontario. So that was even better. I come from a background of, I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD. Let's put it that way. And I was not diagnosed by this psychiatrist I'm talking about, and I'm going to call him Dr. D. I was diagnosed by another couple of therapists that were from an organization in Toronto by CAMH, if anyone's familiar with that, that he sent me, asked me if I'd be willing to go and see what their thoughts were, and I said, of course, I have no problem sharing my story. So the story is, so from there, I was diagnosed from them because the referral letter that was sent from them back to him, he read out to me. And from that, they said, one of the glaring things that I remember from that was most definitely a case of complex PTSD. Because my childhood was one of those childhoods of the alcoholic father, very abusive, mentally, emotionally, physically. The only thing was the other one, he wasn't. Unfortunately, though, I had two much older brothers. They were 7 and 8 years older than me, so quite a few years. So my oldest, who's 8 years, at the age of 5, he started grooming me. And so he is, he's an incredibly cruel person. He is, I'm not a doctor, but I would bet every penny I have, he is a absolute narcissist, and a malignant one too. He will say anything to get his way, and he thoroughly actually enjoys to manipulate women, especially. Because unfortunately, at another point in my life, at the age of 13, I was actually in a situation where I had to stop him from raping a woman. I had to physically fight my older brother and scream for this woman to run. So, but anyways, at the age of 5, or it was probably even younger, I think I was 4, that he started. And he groomed, so it wasn't an aggressive thing. He's very good at grooming because he's very charismatic. So anyways, that's going on. I tried telling my mother around the age of 8, she can't deal because my father at that time, our whole household ran on my father and his moods. So I'm sure there's others that relate to this. You know, that feeling of like everything is about him. If he's in a bad mood, you know, everybody get out of the way, don't make it worse. You know, if he's in a good mood, don't do anything to piss him off. You know, don't rock the boat. You know, it's a good day. Like literally your whole world revolves around him and his moods. And if he's drunk or he's not drunk or he's angry or he's not angry or, you know, just everything. One thing I've just learned actually in the last few years, you know, into my 50s, is that you grow up without a personality. Because nothing is about you. There's nothing ever about what you like, what you want, what are your dreams or anything of the sort, you know, because you're in survival mode. So, you know, but you don't know that at the time. You're just, that's your world and that's what we have to do. And that's how we're living it. So anyways, before the episode happened that I told you about, with having to stop my brother, he had attempted, I was 13, he had attempted to try to start something, and I had had enough. I ran away from home. I convinced my boyfriend, who was 17 at the time, to run away with me. Police pick us up, take us to the police station. They're trying to have me implicate my older boyfriend at the time because they believe that he's got to be the one that's, you know, doing this, and they're wanting me to admit to things because, you know, what they're trying to do. I know exactly what's all happening. And I'm like, no, he's not the problem. No. Well, then what is? And I wouldn't talk. We were there hours. And then finally, one of the police officers comes in the room and he says, actually, your family's here. Pardon me? What do you mean my family's here? My mother, my father, and both my brothers. Really? I said, okay. You know what? I'm ready to talk. You want to know why I ran away and everything? And I told them what happened. And I told them everything, that he's been doing this, you know, since I was a child, etc., etc. If anything, my boyfriend, I was running away. And he was scared for me at my age, so he was coming with me to protect me. So, you know, he is not the bad guy. And so I told them everything. Well, they went speechless, of course. They left out of the room. They were gone for quite a while. They came back in again. And it was just, everything was so calm and weird and everything. And then I was invited to come out of the room. I see my family standing there, but I look at my oldest brother, you know, he's not in handcuffs. There's not, what is going on? At this point in time, my parents had been separated. They finally separated when I was 10. That's a whole nother story because my mother asked me at 10, if we wanted to go, or if I wanted to go, we'd go. If I wanted us to stay, we'd stay. She put the choice in my hands. She parentification, another word I learned recently at the age of 10. So I've been telling all my therapists all this. So anyways, at that point in time, I had been living with not my oldest brother, my other brother. Never had anything with him. He's sweet, you know what I mean? Wonderful brother. I was living with him and my mother. My mother announced at that point in time that she was tired of my shit and that I need to go live with my father. And she walked out of the police station with both my brothers. And I was sent to live with the alcoholic father. Nothing was done. I was like, wow. Like literally there is nobody to protect you. So I went to live with him for a while. That's a big, long, whole story that I'm not going to get into. But anyways, I said, fuck you. I went back to my mother's. Lived there for a little while, then took off. A whole bunch of other things happened in the meantime. My second brother, actually killed somebody with a gun. So my mom's whole attention was to my other brother, and I don't blame her for that. My God, I can't even imagine. I am a mother myself, of that. But I am 15 now at this point in time. Nobody's paying attention to me whatsoever. Going to school was horrendous because my last name is a very unusual last name. So, you know what I mean? Whisper, 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 whisper. Like, how are you supposed to be going to school? And then, your brother's getting ready, to go up on a murder charge. It was just like, I can't deal. I came home and I was like, I'm not fucking going to school anymore. And my mother was like, whatever. And believe it or not, the school never called. There was no truancy officer. Nothing. Nobody ever came looking for me. Like, why is she not in school? Again, I was just like I literally feel invisible. So I left there and, kind of became like a street kid. So anyways, kind of got my act together a little bit. Had a child actually at 17, got pregnant at 17, had my child at 18. And I actually became an escort. So I had stayed with my mother while I was pregnant. But once my son was born, I realized I cannot live in this dynamic, with these people. I have to get away. And so I didn't tell them that I was leaving. I told them I was going for a weekend, but I had no intention of returning. I packed a suitcase for my son. I packed a suitcase for myself, and I left, and come hell or high water, I was going to figure out how I was going to make it, and I did. So, I'm trying to raise a child, and that was another reason for wanting to put me into therapy. So, so when I'm in almost my, mid to, going on at 20s, I was like, you know what? I really don't want to repeat any of the performances of my family, of how I was raised. So I really want to seek therapy. So I found a psychiatrist and started seeing him. And like I said, I told him everything, everything I've said to you, and there's so many things that I haven't. So the years are going on, and we're just talking, but there's, what, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know what therapy is supposed to be or what you're supposed to be doing. So it wasn't actually, at one point in time, I did end up moving to the Dominican Republic. And so I wasn't seeing him for years. I was still in touch with him and stuff like that. A whole bunch of other, there was other times where I was just like, you know what, I just don't want to do therapy right now. I need a break. And he was like, that's fine. That's fine. You call me if whatever. Okay. And so, there'd be 6 months, a year, whatever. But then I'd go back because I was asking questions of, why am I still drawn to this family when there's constant, like my mother, she really doesn't care about me, like all the stuff that I just said, but why am I still so wanting her to be my mother? And, I asked all these questions, I cried and over, and I was never getting really any answers. But again, like I said, I don't know what therapy is supposed to be. And this is before, there is internet. So it was actually COVID. So, as everybody knows, in COVID, everybody's, stuck at home. YouTube. I had always liked YouTube, but started spending more time. Started coming across different things about, trauma and, toxic families, narcissism, et cetera, and just other certain little things that kind of went, And all of a sudden, I started learning all of these new terms, and I was blown away. Like literally, I had panic attacks at times watching videos because I was like, this, like, why was I not hearing this? So, I finally, once I felt, really confident in everything, I'd watched enough like videos and really like deep dived into, complex PTSD, what therapies should you do for that, like really started digging in and hearing all these terms I had never heard from him. And once I had a compilation, then I finally reached out and said, okay, what the fuck have we been doing for 18 fucking years? And he was like, well, what are you talking about? I was like, I started listing off all the things, all the different kinds of therapy and treatment and shadow work and this and you name it, you know what I mean? CBT, DBT, I'm like, What? Why? You knew how damaged I was. You knew how I felt I had no one I could trust. And I told you that as long as if I had you that I could trust. And yet you've kept me in the dark. You know what? And you know what makes no fucking sense is the fact that if he wasn't equipped to deal with this, which can be the situation, and I can understand that, he had no problem referring me. Because when I first began this, I said that he had referred me to, I think there was 2 or 3 of them that did this, interview process thing. It was a couple of hours. There was another, then at one point he was like, I think you might have ADD or ADHD. There is a doctor here in Toronto that's very well known, written a book, whatever else, you know what I mean? Would you consider going? Yeah, why not? You know what I mean? I was not resistant to anything at all. Anything that could possibly help me be healthier, a better person, a better mother, a better friend, a better anything and everything I wanted. And he knew that. So yes, I went to see, you know what I mean? This doctor got diagnosed, ADHD, but that's a whole nother story because, you know what I mean, when you really get into the whole trauma and everything else, there are so many things that overlap. So I don't really know, and that's the least of my concerns at this point in time, to be honest with you. So he had absolutely no problem with giving referrals. And as he saw from me, I was receptive to it. So I don't understand why was there never trauma work? Why? I can't get past this. I can't get over it. It was also almost 2 decades of my life. You know what? Because once I understood so many things of the toxic families, of the golden child, the scapegoat, the flying monkeys, the whole fucking thing, I was just like, oh my God. If I would have understood these dynamics earlier, I would have certainly made very different decisions in my life. But you don't know what you don't know. You have feelings of things, you have suspicions of things, you know it doesn't feel right, but I'm seeing a psychiatrist. So, if it was me or whatever, he'd be telling me. So this is the bubble I lived in, and that's even what made it even worse, like I had said to him, because you made me feel so many of these things were my fault. That it was me either overreacting, underreacting, something of the sort, because he's not saying anything. Because let me tell you, as soon as I did understand all those dynamics, I went no contact with my family. And that's been 3 years now. So that's how I know that if I would have understood things earlier, I would have made different decisions that would have affected my life. You know, maybe it could have been for the worse, but it also could have been for the positive. You know, we don't get that much time in our life. And 20 fucking years is a long time. Like, I don't know what to do with these feelings. I've tried to just say, okay, it is what it is. I know now, and so on, but like, it just makes me feel like everybody gets to just shit on me and then get away with it. Just like my brother. You know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, you can do whatever to me and there's not going to be any consequences. You know, fuck that. You know? So, what would you do if you were in my shoes and had gone through this and everything? How would you be handling it? I'd really, really love to hear. Because any of the other doctors I've tried to talk to, of course, they stick together. They don't want to talk about it. It's best just to move on. Fuck that. And I have my file folder from him too. And I haven't read the whole thing. I've skimmed through some of it. I found out that he was actually talking to my son at one point in time. I didn't give him permission. He was my therapist. That's fucked up. Because unfortunately, my son seems to have taken on the male characteristics that seem to run through my family line, unfortunately. And so with going no contact, he was part of that because he actually teamed up with the brother that had essayed me because they had gone behind my back and gotten power of attorney over my mother because my mother started having cognitive decline and shoved me out of her world. So, yeah. So, I would really like some thoughts on how to handle it because I'm all alone. And I'm overwhelmed with how to feel about all this stuff. Thank you for listening.